Make sure you click that subscribe button below and click the notification bell. That way you'll know exactly when the next episode will drop. Welcome, everyone, again to season 20 of the Business Infrastructure Podcast. I have the pleasure of being joined today by Michael de Groot, which I just learned literally translates into Michael the Great. So let's see if we'll make history here on this podcast. Michael is joining us from the UK. He'll tell us exactly where he is, where he's from, because he is Dutch, living in the UK. So I know there's a story there. And speaking of stories, Michael is actually the founder and chief storyteller at Staying Alive UK. He's also a certified level 1 pickleball instructor. If we have time, I want to ask you about that as well. So yes. Michael, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Alicia. That's brilliant.
So we have to first get this out of the way. You're Dutch, and proud to be Dutch, I can tell, because everything I've read about you online and just from knowing you, from me being on your podcast, you are Dutch. So are you originally from the Netherlands? And if so, what part?
Yeah, I was born in Amsterdam, and my father was Dutch. And my mother was actually Anglo-Indian. That's always what she used to call herself. Yeah, they met in London many, many moons ago. And yeah, the rest is history.
So at what point did you leave the Netherlands? Were you an adult? Did you move as a teenager?
I was a teenager. So I was 17. And we came to the UK. My father was posted over to London. Prior to that, he had a job in South America in a place called Suriname, which used to be a Dutch colony.
I know.
You know it?
I've been there because I have a very good friend there. I know, right? I was going to bring that up anyway. Because I read that in your bio, because a lot of people have never heard of Suriname. So let's definitely talk about that as well.
And so we lived there for 3 years, and it was I was 13, 14, and it was such an experience. I'd never seen poverty before, and it just blew my mind being in a tropical country. And yeah, wonderful experience. We came back to the Netherlands, and then my father was told, right, you have a choice. Now, remember, I said my mother was Anglo-Indian. So she was born in India, but her forefathers were from Ireland at some point back. And she had a very English upbringing. So she loved everything British. And we grew up in Amsterdam, kind of being in like a dual household. It was Dutch and British all at the same time. And it was bizarre, but wonderful too. And so remember this, my mother was very British. And my father was told, right, you have a choice. You can either go to London, where it rains most of the time, or you can go to the US Virgin Islands, Alicia. That was the choice. And he gave that choice to my mother to make.
Oh, wow.
And she chose London, of course, where she always wanted to go. And I have been to the US Virgin Islands, so rest her soul, I've never forgiven her.
The tropical paradise versus
rainy London,
rainy and foggy London, right?
Correct.
Why was there a choice in the first place, Michael? Why was there even a decision that had to be made about when or where to relocate from the
Well, it was because my father was like assistant vice president at the Bank of America, and we were in Suriname. He went over there to save a bank from going bankrupt, literally, which he was successful in doing. And then they wanted to bring him to the Bank of America in London or the Bank of America in the US Virgin Islands for another job that they wanted him to do. So he just had to choose which job he wanted to go to.
Oh, okay. Understood. And speaking of Suriname, again, I have a very good friend who is from there, still lives there. So that's why I'm very familiar with the country. I've been there a couple of times, and I know that there's a difference in the Dutch that they speak versus what you probably grew up speaking? Did you find that to be a difficult adjustment? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it was a massive adjustment for my sister and I. There's four of us, four kids in the family, but my sister and I, the youngest, were twins, and we went over with mum and dad, and we were in the middle of like secondary education, and we had to kind of change all of our secondary education. They were a bit behind there, but being in a tropical climate, you go from school like 7 o'clock in the morning
Yes.
till 12 p.m. And so that was a massive, everything was such a big adjustment, and it was really tough for me. Education was really tough.
Mm,
And yeah, so the dialect or the language there is, apart from Dutch, there's also something called Taki Taki. And so they spoke that language in front of us kids, and my sister and I didn't know what they were talking about. I never learned that language. And it wasn't always pleasant, because you could tell by the body language and the laughter that, we felt at times perhaps a little bit bullied. And, it was interesting, but it also helped me to grow as an individual. And I remember one particular story I'll just share. We had somebody who came and did some cleaning in the house, and my dad could afford it because he got a good salary going over there. And it was a South American Indian lady, and we were taking her home, and we all went in the car, drove her home, and she got out of the car, and I went to my mother, "Where does she live?" She says, "Well, over there." I said, "Where? I can't see her house." I said, "No, no, that's her house." I went, "No, that's not a house, that's a shed. No,
mm,
that's where she lives." And I
wow.
will never forget that. It's been ingrained. That was the first time I saw poverty, and I went, "Wow, this
Mm,
is rather really significant moment for me." And that caught up with me later in life when I started volunteering for an African charity, and
mm,
because I wanted to give something back to, vulnerable children or adults in faraway places
mhm.
where I saw a different way that people have to live.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And I would just say really quickly, for those who've never heard of Suriname, what struck me the first time I ever went was the the fusion of cultures.
Mm,
It was kind of like a utopian kind of in existence in a way, because of the Dutch. You have Indian influence, Indonesian,
yes.
African. So it's all of those cultures, and then to your point, the indigenous people there, and they just kind of all have blended together, if you will, over the years. So shout out to Suriname. It's a beautiful place. Um,
Yeah.
so so you eventually, again, as you mentioned, you and well, based on your mother's decision, you all go to London. And
Mm,
at some point, you become a working adult. And I know you have a background in textiles. So can
that's
you
right.
tell us how did you get into textiles?
Well, when we came to the UK, we were at the age that I was kind of halfway through education, and we had to interrupt that. And we interrupted it by stopping a particular school year and then waiting to be posted out to the UK. So instead, my sister and I went to work for an uncle. Well, he was our best friend of the family, but we called him uncle. So we were working and earning a bit of pocket money, doing like I was doing work in the warehouse. My sister was doing admin work, administration work. And when that was finished, we now had the taste of money, and we went, "Oh, we earned some money." So when we came to the UK, my parents said, "Right, you need to go back and do some more studying." And we went, "Mm-mm, we don't want to do any studying in English, which wasn't really our first language.
Mm,
And therefore that will be really tough. We don't want to do that." So we moved on to wanting to do a job. Parents agreed, and we looked at London. We lived outside of London in a county called Surrey, and so it's about an hour on the train into London. and we got a job there, and we both looked for jobs where we could use our Dutch language. So I found a job for an American textile company called Burlington Industries, and they're actually in the Carolinas. And I got a job there working for or liaising with the Belgian sales office, which obviously where they speak Dutch as well. So I could speak Dutch, and in the office I could speak English. So that's how my journey in work of textiles started.
So you were a Dutchman living in England, working for an American company.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
And so you did that
Yes.
for 28 years, right? Working in that industry.
Yeah, unbelievable. Alicia, I always wanted to get out of it, but I had
Hmm.
no university qualifications. I didn't feel like I had anything to offer. I've, I did great in the textile industry. You know, I kept being promoted from job to job. I was super talented for some reason, and eventually, you know, ended up on boards of companies as a director. Dizzy heights, very boring, but the work was so hard. The textile industry is such hard work. I used to work late hours. I used to work late, and yeah, the internet wasn't around, so you brought lots of papers back in your briefcase back home. You started reading all your papers, your inbox, and I had wonderful experiences, but also remember just working so hard.
Mm. So it
Yeah.
sounds like eventually you just grow weary of it. You finally
Yes.
do get out, obviously, because considering what you're doing now. So can you explain or describe to us, Michael, how you went from leaving the textile industry to
Yeah.
starting your own business, Staying Alive UK?
Okay. We may not have time for this or the whole story, but I'll just try and keep it as short as possible.
Okay.
Um, I became interested. Okay. I was traveling to the to New York with our head designer. I was the sales and marketing director, and we were going to visit in New York Victoria's Secrets to
Mm.
show our product, to show our fabrics. And on the journey, I was complaining about headaches. My sister suffers from something called Crohn's disease. Her twin. So I thought I was having the same issue. I had bowel issues and all sorts. Anyway, she then turned around and said, "Oh, when we get to New York, I will give you some Reiki. And why don't you go and visit this lady in Leicester, a town in the UK, and have some kinesiology?" And I went, "Stop, stop. You're just talking Chinese to me right now.
Mm.
I have no idea what you're talking about." Well, that was the beginning for me becoming interested in alternative health. I
Ah.
did have Reiki from her. I did learn Reiki myself. I did Reiki 1 and 2. And I also studied kinesiology for 3 years and became qualified. And my aim was, when I left the textile industry, is to go into the workplace, because I was so stressed working, and help people with their stress and show them how they could overcome this being at work. I was way ahead of anybody talking about health and wellness at work. This was just in the UK anyway. It was just
Mm.
the beginning of it. And I was too early, Alicia. The
Mm.
recession started in 2007, 08. And that's why my business, I mean, literally, I had a dream about what I was going to call my business. And I woke up, and the message was, "It's Staying Alive UK." And I went, "Well, that's a Staying Alive is a Bee Gees song, right? One of the most famous songs in the world, which I happen to love." And I went, "That's brilliant. Yeah, I can definitely use Staying Alive. I can play the song." And I did. When I did presentations, I played the song, and I got the whole audience singing it.
I'm sure.
And um, so the name kind of stuck, although there was a recession that happened. We all know what happened. Lehman Brothers. You know, this all Lehman Brothers folded in 2008 on my birthday, on
Mm.
the 15th of September and of 2008. And it just went, nobody wanted to know. I went, I can do this. I had a contract pending with a really large company, and they just canceled on me. So I had to go and look and do something else. And that's how my new direction was born.
That new direction. So, but Staying Alive UK, it's. I was going to ask you about the origin of
Mm,
that name. So thank you for sharing that story.
mm,
And it sounds as though it was originally intended to be in the health and wellness space, but I know,
correct.
but it's all about helping other businesses tell their story. So how did it
Yeah.
go from health and wellness to storytelling? And is it because maybe your initial customers were in the health and wellness space?
No.
Oh, okay.
So
I did not
2000
connect
and
those dots correctly.
no, that's well, the thing is, it's such a weird journey that I've had. No, I can't even connect the dots on this journey. So what happened was my sister introduced, whilst I was now I'm looking for work. I was self-employed on my own, not earning, needing to pay a mortgage. And what's happening? My sister introduced me to a company who did online learning, but they had no video. They just had text, like written text, not written, typed text
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
on screens for management training. And they said they're looking for some people to help freelance. So I freelanced for this company for a couple of years, but I didn't really get on with it that well. I got them in some like sales. I got them in some really good business. Then I left that. I stopped that. I was freelance, so I just stopped it. Then I got headhunted to do more freelance for a company who did the same management training, online learning for organizations. But this time they used video. And I went, that's it. It has to be video. I then came across a company um, called RSA, Royal Society of Arts Animate. And they did animations where you see the hand drawing on the screen, and they were reading a lecture in the background. So it was audio, but the audio and what they were talking about was being displayed on this screen. And I went, wow, I want to know how to do this. And in fact, the previous company, I had presented this to them, and then we learned it was really expensive and a waiting list for like 6 months. And I planted that seed in my head that I wanted to get involved in that area. And the video learning company, showed me some tricks how to create a video using PowerPoint, slide in some images, put a voiceover, create a little image. And I started doing this and I got some business.
Mm.
And this is then how the journey on storytelling started, because people gave me the information of what their story, well, they didn't call it a story, their advert was. And I started thinking, oh, these are really bad. You know, this is not a good message they're sending out to their clients. There must be a better way. So I started to train myself in the art of storytelling and what it takes to create a good story. And a short story that goes with a video clip. So put all those two things together. I then came across a piece of software that allowed me to create on my own for very little investment, to create these animations myself. It's not easy to do, but I mastered the skill. And coupled with my storytelling script writing skills, advising the customer that, okay, give me the basic bones of it and I will create a story out of it, put some characters in it, and I can create that animation for you. And that's how then Staying Alive UK became, an animation stroke storytelling company. Not pure 2D, or definitely not 3D animation, not pure 2D animation. It's still 1D, but it's this drawing skill. I don't draw, but I found illustrators who could help me. And then I ended
Uh,
up with one really young illustrator who helped me do all the creation of the artwork after I told him precisely what I wanted to see, to match the script, and then he did it. I put the two things together. I do all the production, get a voiceover, get some music, yeah, and do the animation from there.
And so is it only animation videos that you do?
No,
Okay.
so some people then told me later on, they said, you should run courses on storytelling because you seem to know what you're talking about. I went, no, there's probably better people. So just before COVID struck, I did start to deliver to small business owners, young people as well, young business owners who were just starting out, how to develop their own storytelling skills. So I have like a structure to walk people through. It's not very difficult, Alicia,
Mm.
because we are all storytellers already. We were trained when we were from like 2 years old because our parents were telling us stories every single night if we were lucky. And then that our brain was being rehearsed for that. We talk in stories. When we have conversations with our friends, our family, our colleagues, they are all stories, and we don't even know what that it is. So, it isn't difficult, but there is a format and there is a bit of a structure. But once you master that, you'll just get it because you're already a natural storyteller.
I'm curious as I'm listening to you. I'm wondering if storytelling, there might be someone who's watching this right now or just
Mm,
listening, thinking, I wonder if this applies for services only, where sometimes when you don't have something tangible that you're selling, an
mm,
animation, some type of an explanation type video can work really well. But I could see how this also applies for products also, because sometimes you might want to know the backstory of the company that's okay, got it. Okay. So
yes,
with that
yes,
in mind, Michael, I was wondering if we could take a look at your website, because as you know, here on the Business Infrastructure Podcast, we talk a lot about processes, and processes are definitely needed to help kind of calm the chaos that can come with fast, unmanageable growth. And for those of you who are watching or listening for the first time, business infrastructure is simply a system for how you link your people, processes, and your tools and technologies together so that when you scale, you can do so in a sustainable, repeatable, and profitable way. So, with that in mind, Michael, I was wondering if we could go over to your website, because you did a great job of literally spelling out your own process. So we know the process piece of how you work with your small business clients in particular. I know you can work with any size business, but we're going to focus specifically on the small
yeah,
businesses. But if we could
yeah,
also, as we kind of walk through your process, if we could also talk about some of the people that would get involved, whether it's on your client's team, your team, and then some of
yeah.
the technologies, if you wouldn't mind. I know you've already shared some of the technologies that you're using. And I was wondering, I actually literally just left a volunteer event where some students who are 16 years old, they were tasked with creating businesses, and they will have what's called a market day where they will literally launch their products. I think it
Yes,
would be fun if we could use one of the students' ideas. She has a henna tattoo company.
right.
And if we could kind of, for people who may be thinking, what is henna? Is it safe? Will I have skin allergies? Things like that. So let me go ahead and pull up your website here. And the website, everyone, for those of you who don't have the benefit of being able to see where we are, is stayingaliveuk.com. And we are on the design page. And if you scroll, I guess maybe about halfway down the page, you'll see this wonderful process that Michael has here. And let's just start off with this. I'm going to read through this here.
Okay.
It says the journey is relatively simple, although if you are not used to storytelling, you will need to re-educate your thinking away from traditional product advertising. If you're stuck, just ask me. So, step one is wangle an interesting story out of you. So, if you wouldn't mind, Michael, just kind of
Yeah.
start walking us through your steps, and let's just envision this young lady, again, 16 years old, in Indian American, and she told me about her idea for a henna tattooing business.
Mm,
So if she comes to you and says, Michael, I'm having trouble trying to figure out the best way to promote my service,
yeah.
how would you walk her through your process?
Excuse me. So first question I would ask her, who is your client? Who are the people that you're working with? And I'm assuming if she has this business idea, she probably has had some clients already, even if it's family members to practice on, right? Because if she's studying how to do this and learning her craft, she needs some people that will do, will want it. And I would like her then to go into the mind of those clients. And if she doesn't know their mind, then she can ask them some questions about why would you, why are you having this henna tattoo? You know,
Mhm.
how does it make you feel after you've had it? Or how do you feel before you've had it? So what is it that changes when you have that tattoo? How does it make you feel? And where will you see or hear that people are going to be observing the tattoo? So for example, they might be saying, wow, I love your tattoo. Or, she can see people smiling and, giving a high fives or something that will make them give them a feeling. Now, the reason I'm focusing so much on the individuals, how it makes them feel, is because when we feel something, it creates an emotion in our brain. And when we create an emotion in our brain, our memory of that event will last with us much, much longer. All of us can remember events in our life that created an emotion, either a happy or a sad emotion. You only need to listen to a piece of music sometimes, or an event that happened at school, where you can immediately go back to that situation. So get the story about the individual first of all, and once you know about the individuals, you can write a story about that person without mentioning any names.
Mm,
You can go, this person came to me to have a tattoo because it made her feel this way. That's like almost the selling point.
mm,
But to get up to that point, you need to find out what some of the pain points are for that individual, for that character. That's why I said, how were they feeling before they had it?
mm,
Why are they going to spend money on it? Only because they want to change their state, their emotion, the way they're feeling about themselves, the way they want to be perceived in the world even. So let's go behind that person's emotion. And you don't have to have a unique description of that. You need to have a general one, but you need to base it on some truth. So I don't want to be totally fictitious. You
okay.
need to do some research.
Okay. So that definitely covers the first step of the process, which is
Yeah,
getting that interesting story. And you do have in parentheses here that this is the hardest part. And so then next, are you then once that this young lady would come tell you this story,
yeah,
do you and your team then develop the script for what will
yeah,
become a video? Okay.
yeah. So I generally will change the script, you change the story to a better version of what they've written, because not
Mhm.
everybody will be able to write the best thing. With their permission, I will show them a better version if they would like. Happy to take what they've already done, but I would like to improve it for them. Then we go through splitting it into screens, and then I literally have to go walk the dog and think about what are some of the images that I would like for each scene to go with that bit of the story.
Is
Yeah,
that
and
is that
then
known as storyboarding? I hear
yeah,
story. Okay,
yeah,
got it. Okay.
absolutely. So we do a storyboarding, we do the storyboard and present that back. We do some sketches to go for each scene. We send that back to the client. They have a look. They may want to improve some things on it. If they're happy with it, make any adjustments, then we just get on and get the job done. Then we go into production.
Okay, and going into production, it looks like we've skipped ahead, or you've been talking through these steps,
Yeah,
but it looks like now we're at about step 7. That's is part of production, getting the voiceover recorded. So someone
yeah.
is literally reading that script that you and your team have been putting together and polishing.
That's right. So we've got, once the script and the storyboard is approved, because even whilst you go through storyboard, the client may still change their mind about the script and
Mm.
go, oh, so there's no point going and getting a voiceover done ahead of time. Once it's all signed off, we go and get the voiceover recorded. I have preferred voiceovers in the UK and America because I've done work in both countries. And then once that's done, and we're working in the background, producing each scene, and literally it's like one scene at the other scene at the other scene in kind of video software. And so there's several parts to the video production, which is quite long-winded. But once it's all kind of stuck together as little clips, the voiceover goes over the top of it, and then you have to adjust the speed of
Mm.
the video in line with the voiceover, which is like the trickiest bit. So which is step 9 on the list. And then we add some background music, and then we send the video draft to the client to say, yeah, have a listen and see what you think.
Awesome. And so we can see here on the screen, step 12, once that first draft is ready for review, and this young
Yeah.
lady, who would, is our hypothetical client here, she would
Yes,
then let you know of any changes or adjustments that she would want. And then,
that's right.
but the goal is to not have, I'm sure, several rounds of iterations. You kind of cut it off at a certain point, right?
If we've done our job correctly
Exactly.
at the storyboard step, then there should not be any changes.
Got it.
And I've had very, very few changes because we're meticulous in making sure that everything is signed off, because you don't want to keep going back on yourself so many times. Obviously, it does happen, but not very often, gladly, because we take the process, you know, for the client and for ourselves, we don't want to waste a lot of time.
Sure, sure. And then finally, once it's all agreed upon, you deliver the finished product. And do
Yeah,
most of your clients, where are they using these videos? Because I'm just curious. I know, well, first, actually, before we even get to that, Michael, can you talk about the ideal length? Because I know
yeah,
length matters, especially depending on the platform where that video will be shown.
yeah. Well, everything has changed in the last, what is it, 3 years, 4 years? I don't know, with the advent of TikTok. So
Mm.
everybody is talking now about, Alicia, I remember when YouTube came out, and the total length of video you could load up was, I think, 10 minutes or 15 minutes. You,
Ah,
you couldn't load up anything longer than that.
wow.
And I went, oh, that's crazy. Why do we have such little time? I want to put videos up that are much longer than that. And I was annoyed with YouTube at the time. Well, we know everything changed, but with the advent of TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts and Facebook Reels, whatever they're called now these days. Everybody's talking about short form, short form, short form, short form, short form video. Now, what before short form video in those platforms came about, my recommendation would have been 90 seconds,
Mm,
90, to get people's attention. There's a couple of things with our animations that are important to mention. When you see a hand drawing on the screen, a picture, a drawing of a person or a scene, you want to know what's going to be at the end of it,
mm,
right? You want to see the complete scene. You're also listening to a voice. You're also listening to music at the same time. So all the kinesthetic receptors in our brain are being used. You know, there is hearing, there is seeing, there is feeling, and there's no smell involved. But you are literally hitting all of those with a whiteboard animation. That's why they're so useful. And people don't get bored. But if you do a 2 minute or a 2.5 minute, 3 minute, it can get boring. And because people are being trained to only watch literally seconds these days,
mm.
it can be tricky. But what you can do with that in mind, you can go, okay, we do a 90-second YouTube or a website one, but we can then chop it up into little segments and put these on TikTok or Instagram Reels, just to give people little tasters, little bites, because sometimes you don't want to give them the full story. You
Mm,
just want to give them a small bit of the story so they're then hungry to come to your website to learn more. So
got it.
that's another trick that you can play with.
And it's again, just to, years ago, someone told me if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a
Mm,
video is worth 1,000 pictures. So
yeah,
there's just something very powerful about literally motion picture in motion, a video
yeah,
to draw in engagement. And so I certainly can understand how the work that you're doing, Michael, would be far more effective. Again, we're talking specifically for small businesses in their promotional campaigns in comparison to just a static image. And I
yeah,
just want to head over to your YouTube page really quickly so that we can shout out your YouTube page, and it's called Staying Alive UK, and you can clearly see examples of the work that Michael and his team are doing, which is absolutely amazing. But I also wanted to point out, I'm just kind of scrolling down here. I also
yeah,
wanted to point out this webinar, part 1 and part 2 of a
yeah,
storytelling webinar, and we'll definitely make sure that we will maybe embed these videos on the show notes for this episode, or if nothing else, definitely include a link, because I think
yeah.
there's such great information in there, very useful. And it's also very clear to me that this is not something I would ever want to do on my own. I know with some of these animation tools, they do have a do-it-yourself component, but as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, there's no way I would want to do this myself. Let me leave it to the experts. I know we have to start wrapping up. I told you, Michael, this would happen. We've gone
That's
way over
fine.
30 minutes.
That's
But
fine.
I'm do wondering, before we officially close, two things. One, do you have any parting words of advice for any entrepreneurs or small business owners who are just they're stumped trying to figure out, how can I get the most bang for my buck? I don't have maybe a large budget. I don't have certainly don't have the large budgets of these large corporations,
Yeah,
but how
yeah,
can I get the most bang for my buck when it comes to promoting my goods or services?
yeah. Great question. I'll keep it brief, but it's really, really simple. So the first question I would ask people is, do you love the adverts that you see on TV? And there's always some person in the audience that says, yes, I do. But 99% of people say, no, we don't love them because they're an interruption in the movie or the program that we're watching. And adverts like you see on TV are not a good example to use for your business, that type of advert, whether it's video or static or anything like that. You have to weave some story into it to get people's attention. And there are lots of elements that you have to take on board in order to do that. But please just look at your own life and how you communicate with your friends, families, and colleagues, and just listen to the stories that people are telling you and look at the emotions that people are having as a result of those stories. That's what you need to tap into. Stay away from the adverts. Think about the movies, though, because we all love the movies. We love going to the movies, or we love watching Netflix and all the other channels that are out there, because we're drawn to movies because they are stories. We are already programmed for it. So avoid ads and tell stories.
Avoid ads and tell stories. And what I'm also getting from that is pay attention not only to what your customers or potential customers say verbally, but pay attention to those nonverbal cues as well, the emotional response that you see them have as they talk about something, or to your point, tell a story. Second closing question, Michael. What resources can you share with us? Please plug your podcast. But I know you also have some storytelling workshops that you give. But can you talk about those two things, and then also any other resources that you'd like to share?
I'm always willing to share resources. So on my website, you can download a storytelling ebook that just gives you the basics. There's also, as you quite rightly said, there is actually a storytelling workshop. You've got those 2 webinars on YouTube that people can watch. So there's a lot of free education that I give people to get started and to get their head around it. And I'm not expecting I'm not selling these. I'm giving these away for free. But if you enjoy it, you can use Buy Me a Coffee and literally buy me a coffee online. But that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to share with people the art of storytelling. And so on my website, people can find out about the whiteboard animation, and they can find out about, how to do storytelling properly. And they can always shout out, and I can always share additional resources if they wish to.
Absolutely. Well, one quick book that I would like to plug, and I'm sure you already know about this book, but it's called The Hero's Journey.
Yes.
By Joseph Campbell. Because when I was writing my book, that was a story. That was a book that I read. I watched a documentary also about the book and how Joseph Campbell came to write the book. And I just found it to be fascinating. And apparently that was also the inspiration that George Lucas used in coming up with Star Wars. So that's when it really got my attention. So for those who are listening, that's also a book that you can check out as well. And we'll make sure that we have links to all of these resources that you've provided with us in the description box for those who are watching this on YouTube right now, but definitely in the show notes on the podcast episode as well. Michael, thank you so much. You are amazing. I know we could easily go another hour, but I know we have to cut it off because, as you just said, people don't want to watch terribly long videos.
No.
So we will cut this short now. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time to speak with us today.
Thank you so much for your time and having me on your podcast. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere. Be sure to click the link in the description box below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell so that you'll know when our next episode drops. Until then, keep operating smoothly.